Okay, all good?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So what we have is 5 different ways, different areas that have an impact and influence on your development as an individual and also a family. Social, environment, emotional, cognitive, and physical. Another way that it can be said is biopsychosocial. Biopsychosocial. You can also add into there spiritual too. Okay? Biopsychosocial, spiritual. Okay? When you're looking at this, what you're basically looking at is what I've said as far as earlier. You're looking at family developmental history with the biopsychosocial / spiritual. Not all your clients possibly are going to come to you in a church setting. They might, and even if they do come to you in a church setting, they may not be practicing any type of religious exercise and stuff. Okay? I do know of several, I know of one, but I know that there's several churches within the Kansas City community that do offer counseling services not only to their parishioners but also to the outside community, and anybody and everybody is welcome to come in and receive counseling in that church setting. But not everybody that goes into those are necessarily believers or churchgoers. So you still have the spiritual part of it too, but you're looking at the family developmental history. You're looking at the social history. Okay? Now your family, South Korea, socially, what would be unique about your family socially as far as the historical part of it? Were they farmers? Were they white collar? Were they blue collar? Were they kind of hard to say?
Yeah, they're they grew up countryside.
Okay.
I
Okay.
don't know. Yeah, very much.
Okay. Anybody from a farm community? Rural community? Urban? Suburban? Okay. All right. So that in and of itself has an impact. All right. When you think about the social setting, all right, when you think about a rural community, a lot of times the schools are not quite like the schools in a suburban setting. For example, they're not quite as large. So you have the differences there that create a different type of social environment. So you have that part of it too, okay? Medical history. Medical history. I mentioned my grandmother. She was diabetic. Okay? My grandmother took her shot every day. Fortunately, none of my siblings picked up on that. I don't have any siblings of mine that are dealing with diabetes, nor does there any of my mom's siblings who are diabetic either. Okay? But medical things can have an impact on a family. It's important to know about that too. Psychiatric history. You might not think that that's important, okay? But psychiatric history can have a bearing on it as well. Any type of substance use or misuse, right? Is there any type of trauma in the family history? Military history. Any of your family members in the military?
Because Korea is necessary to go to army. Yeah.
Okay, it's required. Gotcha.
Required.
Yeah. Anybody else? No?
Okay.
Okay. I come from a line of military people. My dad was rejected from Vietnam, but I had 3 uncles that served over there. Fortunately, all of them came back. I have 2 son-in-laws who are military right now. So how does that have an impact on me? it's, once you start to see some of this, you might be able to make some connections as far as if any type of presenting issue. Financial history, I've already mentioned it, drew the dollar sign up there, okay? Finances is one of the big obstacles in marriages. Any type of legal history, okay, now this might be interesting, but you might not find it so much in certain settings, but if you step into like a drug and alcohol treatment center or facility or something like that, you're going to be finding all kinds of legal history with those individuals. All right, not all of them, but you'll find that it's pretty prominent in that. Mental status, okay? Mental status. There are exams that you can have your clients take that give you an idea of their mental state and things, if you feel like that's necessary. Okay, different types of strengths or resources that are available to them. You can also do any type of an initial assessment, which you will want to do anyway. You can do a depression inventory, you can do an anxiety inventory, you can do an ACE inventory. There's all different types of things that you can do to give an assessment for you to help you make a proper diagnosis of a presenting problem. And then you're going to be looking at goals. What type of goals are you going to want to work with or help to have these people develop? Now, when you think about goals, keep this in mind. When you think about goals, keep this in mind. When you're developing a goal, make sure that you're implementing the client into the development of a goal. You want them to take ownership into this, right? Like for instance with depression, okay? What is one of the things, or do you know what one of the things that a client can do to help deal with depression? Any idea?
Is it clinical or what did you?
I'm sorry?
Did you just say clinical or any type?
Any type of goal that you can have them do. It does deal with clinical in a sense, but what is one of the easiest things, do you know, that they can do? It's an exercise. It's literally walking. Okay? And what you want them to do is you're going to suggest it, but you're going to explain it to them. Okay? Because they're dealing with depression, they're struggling with depression. And one of the things that actually helps somebody who's depressed is to actually exercise. But walking is one of the best ways to do it, because you can go for a 15-minute walk 3 times a week and actually start to change that person's emotional state. Now, the walk needs to be at least 120 paces per minute. What the idea is to get the heart rate up. And as you get the heart rate up, you're naturally getting the blood flow to start flowing through the body more. And as you increase blood flow, you're actually allowing more blood to go to the brain, more oxygen to get to the brain, which is healthy for the brain, which also helps to change a little bit of the cognitive part of that individual. Does that make sense? So you tell them, okay, this is what I want you to do. Okay? I really want you to do this. This is something that's going to benefit you. I want you to pick a day. You're going to pick 3 days a week, whatever's convenient for you. I want you to go for a 15-minute walk. That's it, just 15 minutes. But make it a brisk walk, about 120 paces per minute. That's a brisk walk. You just do it for 15. Okay? Now, when you come back next week, I want you to report to me how you feel, how you felt before and after. How did it feel through the course of the week? Were there any changes that you noticed in your physical state? Was there any changes that you noticed in your mental state? Okay, then when they come back next week, you're going to say, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to make it 3 times a week for 20 minutes. And you're going to report back next week. What you're doing is you're increasing it 5 minutes per week until they get to 45 minutes or 50 minutes a week in a walk 3 times a week. And you'll be surprised at some of the changes that take place. Now, that's just one. But as you start to do other things with them, you're incorporating them. Now, help me, okay? Let's work on this together. All right, I've suggested the walk. What else do you think you can do that's going to help you combat depression? So you're bringing them into it, okay? So when you're thinking about goals and recommendations, include them into the process, all right? Okay, let's shift gears again. Non-traditional family. Who could define that? Who wants to define it? Any ideas? Okay, let's do this. Can you define traditional family? No?
I mean, in my own words and from the Bible perspective, it's marriage of one man and woman, producing children, being fruitful and multiplying.
Okay, traditional.
Yeah.
Okay? Okay,
So,
true. True. When you think about a traditional family, you do incorporate the biblical definition of family. Okay? How much has family, when you think about it, how much has family changed in our society, in your lifetime? Drastic, isn't it?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard the statistic about the divorce rate?
Like
In the United States, in the United States.
Okay.
You were saying?
It's like half of marriages end in divorce or something.
Pretty close to it.
Yeah.
You want to know what's staggering? The divorce rate in the church is higher than the divorce rate in the world. You know why? Because the world's not getting married. They're living together. People in churches are getting married. So the divorce rate in the church is climbing higher than the divorce rate in the world. Do you know what how can I word this? Do you know what the divorce rate for second marriage is? People who go through a second marriage have a greater risk of divorce than a first marriage.
Yeah.
They're about 65 to 70% chance of failure with a second marriage, and it goes up from there and stuff. A traditional family is a husband and wife who have offspring and stay together. A non-traditional family is basically a second marriage where you have step involved in it.
Adoption would also be a non-traditional?
Adoption, that's a good question.
Because like if they're stayed married and stuff, but it's not their own biological child.
Right. The thing about the adoption part is sometimes, okay, and I think it was this isn't part of your textbooks, but this is one of mine. It talks about that with children who are adopted, that sometimes they can feel that they're not part of the family because they're not biological. Adoption, that's a good question. I really don't have an answer for you, but that's a good question. So a traditional family, the husband and wife who have children and stay together. A non-traditional family are those who have divorced and remarried and may or may not have steps involved as far as children.
Or even also a spouse passes away and they're widowed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then that spouse might remarry. Yeah. So when you think about it in that light, but as I've tried to, as far as the beginning here, tried to present to you, not so much traditional, non-traditional as a fact of the challenges with families. whether traditional or non-traditional, you're still going to encounter different challenges to that family. Okay, so let me give you a couple of definitions here as far as family. Quote, family is a natural social system with properties all its own. One that evolved a set of rules, roles, and power structure, forms of communications, and ways of regulation and problem solving that allow various tasks to be performed effectively. That's written by two psychologists, okay? And you could tell by the definition, okay? Barna, who is a research organization, says, demographically, the two-parent family with biological children all living together has nearly reached minority status as a type in as a family type in America. Single-parent, blended, multi-generational, and other alternative family types continue to increase. So you see, what they're saying right here is there is a definite and noticeable shift between the traditional and non-traditional, as shifting that where the traditional family is now becoming a minority status. Single parenting is really on the rise in a large way. It's really on the rise. I see quite a bit of this in my practice, a single parent and things. Another quote for you from another psychologist. The family is considered by most to be the basic socialization unit of any society, the linchpin of civilizing culture. The axiom, as goes the family, so goes the community, the church, and the nation. The linchpin to society, the family. Okay, this same psychologist went on to say, families are also defined and evaluated by their boundaries, those invisible but very real lines of distinction that separate one family from another family, as well as the rest of the world. So when you think about it, there's a large definition as far as family, whether it's traditional or non-traditional. Okay? The boundary lines. Do you ever stop to think about the boundary lines that you grew up with? I never really did. Personally, I didn't. But in studying for this and everything, it's like, oh, that's true. There's boundary lines that my parents implemented into the family that did set us apart from other families within the community. I unknowingly did that raising my children. My wife and I did that raising our children and things. We set up those different types of boundaries as well. But we tried to expand, my wife and I tried to expand it with our kids from my generation and from her generation. Okay? There are two different types. There's a closed family and an open family. And once you hear this, it goes without explanation. But anyway, a closed family system has tight boundaries and allows very little interaction with an influence from the outside world. It is often described as an insulated or enmeshed family system. Do you think that describes your family, you growing up? Not so much a closed system. So maybe the open system, the open family system, has loose family boundaries with much back and forth flow between family members and the outside world. Is that more your guys' family? A lot of mine was the closed, when I was growing up, was the closed. I mean, we interacted with the outside world, but there was a lot of boundaries as far as the fact that my mom and dad said this far and no further type of thing. You're not going to interact with those people or this and that and stuff of that nature. Even though we went to school with them, they still set up boundaries as far as what we could do. So there was a little bit of closed in my family upbringing, right? How I grew up and stuff. Healthy families usually enjoy a good balance between open and closed boundaries, distinctive and supportive of its individual members, yet able to grow with and adapt to the surrounding culture. So you really want to, when you're working with families and stuff, you really want to help them develop some type of an open and closed system. When you think about it spiritually, you definitely want to help them develop as far as any type of spiritual boundaries that need to be there, that the Bible is very clear when it lays it out. And some families might come to you within a church setting that really don't have any idea, or they're kind of vague, or maybe new to the concept of spirituality, Christianity, and things, and they're looking to you to help provide them some type of structure, some type of leadership, some type of tools to implement within their family system. So when you're working with them, help them through this process, develop a good balance between basic family functions and living, functions that both individuals and families depend on for survival and meaning. All right, so there are basic family functions when you're working with people that you'll need to be aware of as well. Okay? The regulation of sex and reproduction. Sexual communication. Being able to talk with your clients about that subject. And when you talk to them about it, okay, now know that unless you're going to continue your studies and move into the medical field, you're going to be limited a little bit as far as some of that topic goes. But you're going to know a lot about it anyway. All right? Don't be ashamed. As I've shared with clients, that sex is what God created. And when it's within the bounds that God created, it's fully healthy, functional, and satisfying. But you must maintain those boundaries, which doesn't take away from the fact that outside those boundaries, that there's still not satisfaction in it. There's just consequences. Right? So be willing to speak with your clients openly about things like that. Socialization and identity. The family is the primary tool by which individuals learn the roles and rules of living in society that shape personal and family identity. What is your role in society? What is your role within your community? What is your role within your family? I'm pausing for you to answer. Any idea? Have you ever thought about it, really? You ever thought about it? What is your role within your family? What is your role within your community? Now, your community right now, if I might, your community right now is this campus. You live on campus, this is your community, okay? So within this community right here, you guys have basically a lot of the same approaches to life, a biblical worldview, problem solving, plans and things. But what is your role within a community? You're a basketball player. You're an athlete. Is that primary?
I guess so for here.
Okay. That good thing?
Sometimes.
I would agree. And you're a student. Yeah. So in the basketball realm, you're set apart from other students, because not all the students are basketball players. So part of your role is an athlete. So in that role, and I'm not picking on you, okay? In that role, how do you fulfill, or how do you fulfill your role that God has for you in that, and you don't have to answer, okay? That God has for you in that realm. You see what I'm saying? Okay, when you're sitting down with a client and you're looking and you're talking with these individuals about different things, you're helping them to identify their purpose. What's their role? And when you think about it within a family, okay? When you think about within a family, I'll do it the way the genogram has it, okay? All right, 2 boys, 3 girls. All right, this is the birth order. All right, so that's the birth order. Each one of these individuals within a family, there's dad, there's mom, okay? Each one of these individuals has a specific role within that family. Do these people know what they are? It's hypothetical, okay? And a lot of times when you're talking with people and they come into you and things and you start working with them and you do something like this on a whiteboard, okay, all right, here's dad, here's mom, okay, we know what mom and dad's role is, but let's look at the kids, okay, mom and dad's role, okay, they're providers, they're protectors, they're leaders, they're spiritual leaders, you know, different things. We could probably make a list right here, and it might be a good thing to do is make a list. Okay, let's write this down and have mom and dad do that. Then when you come to the kids, it's like, okay, what's your role? What's your place in this structure? Now see, mom and dad might be surprised too by that type of questioning. Wait, they're kids. And let's just say that, let's say 12, 10, 9, 8, 7. Okay? And they might say, well, they're children. They're not even a teenager yet. You know, in our society today, he can't even get a job. In my generation, he was working in the summertime. In my dad's generation, she was working because my dad grew up on a farm. Okay, see the difference? So what's their role? They definitely may not know what it is. This might be a surprising question to them, but how are you helping this all come together to function as a family? So that each person is actually fulfilling, one, their God-given purpose, right? Each one of these kids, now, let's just go this way. Let's say that these two right here, or let's just say this one right here. Let's change the age. What does that tell you? Looking at the ages, what does this tell you? You do this then. I'm sorry?
The youngest child gets more attention. Or
Okay. No, not going that way. Let me do this now.
Ooh,
Does it help?
Probably wasn't planned.
Bingo.
wasn't playing.
Bingo. Wasn't planned. Whoops. I asked the client one time because there was a drastic age difference. And this client was in my office by themselves. And I said, I'm going to ask a personal question. It's not meant to offend you, so please don't be offended by it. And I'm not intending to be critical or anything. But were you planned? And this is what I knew. That's what I knew. And boom, like that. He goes, no. Just that quick. No. I wasn't. I was a mistake, was the next words he followed with. Where did he learn that word? More than likely, it started here, down to here, it bled over to here. More than likely. But it started here. Okay, so what's his role? Well, first of all, he's identified as a mistake. So he thinks that he is a mistake. And when you think about a person who says they're a mistake, what kind of value do they have?
They don't have any. They have low self-esteem.
They have low self-esteem. And this individual was a troublemaker. So, when you think about this, okay, so looking at this in the fact of socialization and identity. Okay, we looked at the regulation of sex and reproduction, the biopsychosocial spiritual dimensions. These are gifts that God gives us, all right? It's clearly stated within Scripture that God made man and woman, therefore God created sex. He also established the boundaries within that was to be exercised and enjoyed. Okay, so the socialization and identity. So what's the family? The family is the primary tool by which individuals learn the roles and rules of living in society that shape personal and family identity. So when you help an individual identify what their role is, you're helping them to identify them as an individual. Does that make sense? And the thing about this scenario right here was that person, even though it was a mistake, that was actually his family tree. His mom and dad were not divorced and remarried. They were his biologicals. Okay? So you're going to encounter this, and what I'm saying is you're going to encounter this in any type of setting. Okay? So you're helping them to identify what their primary role is, who they are, how that they function within society, within the family. Okay? Companionship, the third one, companionship. The family meets needs for love and affection, for solace and comfort, and is the place to discuss and test out new ways to interact and relate with the larger world. Okay? This one's important. This one's very important. The family meets the needs for love and affection. Right? Very, very important. So when God grants you guys the opportunity to get married and have a family, you want to understand this, okay? I can't stress this enough. I really can't. That your children is going to learn, your children are going to learn about love and affection from you guys first and foremost. And they need to learn it from you. They don't need to learn it from out there. Okay, they need to learn it from you. Okay, it's very important. It's amazing how that, and I say it's amazing. It's amazing how attachments are developed based upon the concept of love and affection. It's amazing. It's one of those things that I wish that I could talk more about the need for this among parents. You guys are the primary instrument and the role model for the demonstration of love and affection to the children so that they don't go elsewhere. I used to work in a drug and alcohol center. I was a clinical director down there. And it was amazing to have these clients, and it was a male facility, so all of them were males. It was amazing to have these guys come through my office one right after another, where most of the time in their life that was not demonstrated. And they went elsewhere to find it. And they still, even in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, were still struggling with the fact of, I didn't get it from mom and dad. They had a hard time And it was a struggle to work with them through the fact of that mom and dad didn't demonstrate that and show it to them in those developmental years. And those men struggled with it. They struggled with it. So keep that in mind, and I pray that you guys learn how to develop this, because God's going to use you in a way that's going to help others understand that concept. All right? He's also going to help you develop it better than, and this is not meant to be an insult to you guys, okay? So please don't take it this way. He's going to help you develop it more than what you received it from your parents. That make sense? Okay, so be willing to learn and to grow in that area, okay? A fourth one, conferring power and status. The family is a vehicle for learning and testing the powers and limits of living in the social web of relationships. Understanding the influence of gender, birth order, size, assigned roles, age, and developmental status, and is a significant influence on day-to-day living. Here again, power and status. You guys never fought with your siblings, did you?
True.
Who was the one that was going to take the lead, or who was going to set where, or whatever, you know. Didn't happen in your life, did it? So you guys, even with in your life, and the thing is you look at it now and you think back to it, and sometimes you snicker about it and laugh about it, and that's good. That's good. But you learn something. You learn something. And the thing is some of that is still being exercised in your life today within the community that you live in now. Power and status. Where do you fit in the family? Where do you fit in the community and things? How do you relate in all of this? So, ask you guys to define family. I'm going to ask you guys to do something a little bit more too. Can you draw a spiritual connection with family? Can you make a spiritual connection with it? When you think about family, can you do a spiritual connection with it? You're saying yes, so go ahead.
Explain.
Uh-huh.
Like spiritual connection meaning like something like this one?
Like spiritual. How do we...
I don't know. Because I always talk about my spiritual status with
Mhm.
my mom.
Okay.
And then she like some like advice, give me advice, like
So there's a close relationship
with my mom.
with
Yeah.
your mom, a very close relationship. Good. That's part of what I'm looking for. Okay? There's a close-knit relationship. Your mom helps you, she guides you, she gives you advice and stuff. Okay? Anybody else? No?
About the spiritual identity of family.
Yeah, can you draw a spiritual connection? So in other words, let's say that I come to you and I'm sitting in your office and you're counseling me, and you want to share some spiritual insight into my life about how the family reflects, or how the family shows forth, or how the family functions spiritually. What does it picture? What does a family picture spiritually?
Yeah. Well, we always see God as a father, Abba Father, and so that is a primary example through the identity of Jesus Christ of what a father should be like, loving, protective, and providing. And that's why husbands are to love their wives more than themselves as the head of a family, like Jesus is the head of the church.
Good.
And so
Good.
things like that.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? Good. Ladies? She's looking at you and your turn.
Talk a lot in our family about serving each other
Serving each other.
and
Good.
placing them before ourselves.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Your turn.
This one's a hard one because, like, it's kind of like a love-hate relationship because, like, the second and third generation are, like, half atheists. And so it's very difficult to talk about those things with those family members.
Mhm.
But within, like, my parents and my siblings are adopted from China. And that was, like, a God-given thing. So, like, we talk about that a lot and that dynamic.
That's cool. So the adoption part. Awesome. I like that. Good. Good. Think about that, guys. Okay? Think about it. How can you help somebody see the spiritual dimensions of a family? All right? How can you help them see the spiritual dimensions of a family? All right? When you think about it, I'm going to help you out here. You guys touched on it. All right? Each of you touched on it. The family in its social dimensions reflects God. In its social dimensions, it reflects God. Okay, you have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Okay, within the Trinity, now I'm not going to go into any type of theological discourse here. All right, you have your own professors here to do that. All right, you have three distinct identities. Right? Father, Son, Spirit. Three distinct identities. Okay? They exist in a relational role. Correct? Okay? They have unity. Right? Not only unity with each other, but also unity with what they created, such as man, and also everything else as far as the entire creation. But yet, the three, even with distinct individual characters, with distinct roles, and also in unity, they are still yet one. Right? So, look at it this way. Okay. With the spiritual aspect, you have the Father, Son, and Spirit. Three different individuals. Differences in the three, but yet one. They're in a relationship, one with another. They're in a relationship also with you and I. They're also within a relationship with all of creation. Okay, the family. You think about the family. Father, mother, children. Okay? Just leaving children as children. Okay? Father, mother, children. Okay? Three distinct entities within a family. Different aspects or different parts of that. Okay? Male, female, children, husband, wife, mother, father. Okay? But yet they're in a relationship. But yet they're different. But also they're in a relationship with their created, with their creatures, with what they've created, their children. Okay? But also they're in a relationship with other things in creation. For example, people within their community, people within their church. They're in a relationship with them as well. Pretty neat, isn't it? When you think about it that way. So if somebody asks you about the spiritual dimensions of a family, you can use the fact of the Trinity and things. Pretty neat how God designed it. I think it's really fascinating. Okay? The family health, individual health, and maturity are inseparably intertwined. The power of the family identity and socialization is critical for optimal individual development and maturity. You guys grew up in a safe environment, didn't you? Okay? It helped you as far as your health. It didn't protect you from different types of sicknesses, but it helped you as far as your health. It helped you as far as your mental health was concerned as well. You grew and developed mentally because you were in a safe and secure environment. Okay, now if you take an unhealthy environment, there's going to be some different things that develop within that individual. Okay? I told you I worked at a drug and alcohol center, recovery center. I had an individual apart there, and he talked to me all the time. He wasn't one of my clients, but he talked to me all the time. And he was from Los Angeles, and he was of Hispanic origin. His nationality was Hispanic. He was part of one of the larger gangs out there. The family that he grew up in, his older brothers used to beat on him all the time. And there were several times that he told me that he was sleeping and his brothers would come home after doing their stuff at night, which gang members do. And about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, they'd wake him up. They were beating on him. Not sibling type of beating on him. They were beating on him. And he said that his father told him, he said, boys, you better leave him alone. He's going to grow up one of these days and he's going to hurt you. And they just laughed at his father. So as time went on, they kept doing this, and he said, I grew up, and he did grow up. Okay, he was taller than me. He was broader than me, and he was definitely mean. And they came in to wake him up one night at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, and he had a baseball bat laying beside his bed. And he grabbed the baseball bat because he heard him come in, and he said that if my father hadn't stopped me, I would have killed him. Now, that's the home environment that he grew up in. And he spent time in prison, and he told me, he said, Mike, he said, this is the way he said it. He said, Mike, I put holes in people, and I'm not afraid to do it again. I was just like, okay, we're friends, right? And stuff. What he meant was he's actually stabbed and shot people. Now that's the home that he grew up in. Now compare that to yours. See the differences? Okay. Now you and I, and rightfully so, okay, rightfully so, not just because of what Scripture gives us, but because of what the laws of our land give us, would say that that was an unhealthy home environment. Rightfully so. Yours is a healthy home environment. His thought pattern was more of the fact of self-preservation and domination. Because if he wasn't strong enough, he was always picked on and always beat on. So his was self-preservation and domination. What's yours? Oh. Different, isn't it?
Yeah.
Vastly different. Okay? So when you see this here as far as the health of a family, okay, family health, individual health, all right, maturity, they're inseparable, they're intertwined. The power of the family identity and socialization is critical for optimal individual development and maturity. Okay, his development wasn't as far along as your guys' development. He actually never got a GED and stuff. His reading and writing was very limited. You guys have been able to actually develop a lot of that in your life. All right? We're supposed to go to 9 o'clock, right?
Yes.
Okay, why are they leaving?
They're probably taking a break.
Oh, okay.
Unless it's one of those professors who let them out super early, because that's what happened the last couple of weeks of one class. So.
Okay. Well, I might do that for you guys tonight too.
whatever you want to call it. Whatever.
I figured you wouldn't mind. I figured you wouldn't mind. Okay. Does that make sense, though? All right. The family is also like the church. The identity, boundary, and relational functions of the church, both within it and in relation to the outside world, operate almost synonymously with family dynamics. Of course, you see in a lot of references from pastors and from Scripture how that the church is like a family and associated to and drawn up like an individual and like a family and things. Trouble is reproduced but can also be stopped in families and in generations of families. There is an undeniable psychological and spiritual dimension to sin of the fathers that are visited upon the third and fourth generation. Whether literal or metaphorical, it is accurate to speak of generational curses. And I mentioned this earlier, such as alcohol, violence, or depression. Okay? This is one thing about the genogram that you might find with other people when you're doing it with other people. Maybe not in your life, maybe not in your family. But when you're working with families, you might find some of these things that existed in generations past. Alcoholism, drug use. Now, what you might also find is the excuse for why it's there. Okay? People are willing to actually propagate an excuse that actually removes them from any responsibility. Does that make sense? And one of the things that they're going to use is a genetic factor. Well, I was genetically born this way.
Yeah.
Okay? And you will find this in sometimes if you're dealing with transgender, with the LGBTQ community. You might find this in that type of argument as well, if you get into that type of work. All right? They're going to use some of this as far as an excuse for the reason why they do what they do. Excuse me. Okay, so with these right here, because I'm going to shift gears here again. Okay, with these right here. Some of these took the approach of family therapy in a systemic way. In a systemic way. I kind of drew it up here a little bit earlier and didn't mention it exactly, but some of these individuals developed a system approach to family therapy. In other words, they moved from looking at the individual to looking at the system of the family as a unit. Okay? And you might find, and this is one of the reasons why some of these are very prominent today, is because of that systemic approach and development to family therapy. When I mentioned the fact of, and I drew it up here, that mom and dad, and I had the dollar sign here, and the son down here, and drugs. Okay? The system approach is a fact of this all. What did I have? Another one and another one. Okay? What they look at, what the system looks at, is this whole thing right here. That as a system, that as a unit. And when you think about it, it holds a lot of weight to it. It does hold weight to it when you think about it in the biblical sense. When God created the family, He created a unit, which consists of individuals. This is one reason why I said that this as a unit, you have to look at that, but you cannot ignore the individual person. Follow? Okay, so that's what especially Murray Bowen developed a lot of, was his theory developed a systemic approach to the family. Now, keep in mind that even though it's systemic, you still have to look at the individual as well. So you're seeing the whole and you're seeing the individual. Okay? Follow? This is sometimes a challenge. Because even though, like I said, even though this, they might come to you with the identifying issue, the identifying problem as this right here, what might be the hard part is to find the underlying problem of why this. Because they might hide it. They keep it suppressed. They don't want anybody to know about it, because if others find out that this might be the real issue right here, then it has a possibility of bringing shame upon right here. And that could actually bleed down to here, which could actually develop into other problems, which could escalate this. Okay? So it's not so much the fact of, oh boy, what am I getting myself into? It's the fact of being more of a detective, a researcher, looking further into it, being able to ask questions, right? Some of this is actually going to be developed the longer that you work in the field. You'll be able to develop these questions the further you get into it. Okay, have you ever heard of the phrase, the miracle question? No? Okay. Thought I could pull it off the top of my head, but forgive me. Okay. Oh, it was almost right. This individual right here, okay, Steve DeShazer, okay, he developed a solution-focused family therapy. One of the originators of it. Solution-focused family therapy focuses specifically on solutions on what works for the client. Okay, the reason why this is important is, unlike Alfred Adler and before, they look more back into the history, okay, and tried to find something back in history that created the problem. His was more of the fact of, okay, this is where we're at, what's the solution to the problem, and let's move from here. Okay, in insurance reasons, this became very popular because it's more short-lived. This stuff right here and further back was long-term type of care. What I mean by long-term type of care, 1, 2, 3 years of therapy right here, where this right here was basically 12 sessions and you're done. And insurance companies have moved more towards the fact of a solution, get it done quickly type of thing. They don't like the long drawn out process. So his was a solution focused, and the miracle question, basically, the miracle question is this. Suppose that one night while you were sleeping, there was a miracle and this problem was solved. How would you know what would be different? That's the miracle question. Kind of neat when you use it in therapy. Okay. Suppose that one night while you were sleeping, there was a miracle and this problem was solved. How would you know? And what would be different? And you could probably use this in a lot of different types of presenting problems. Depression, anxiety, okay, whatever. You can use it in a lot of different ways. And all it is asking, okay, is a miracle takes place while you're sleeping tonight. And the problem that you have disappears. That's the miracle. So when you wake up in the morning, how are you going to know that things are different? How are you going to know that the miracle took place? What would be different? it's really, and I've asked that question to clients before, and it's amazing sometimes of the looks you get and the lack of response you get too. Because one of the things you might find is like with the problem here with the sun, is the fact that sometimes people don't want to get rid of the problem because it exposes something else. And then when it exposes something else, you have something else to deal with. And sometimes people don't want to do that. They're fine with the fact of, oh, he's the problem. But when it becomes back to me, it's like, oh wait, I have a problem? Then it becomes an issue at times. Okay? So that's the miracle question. Try it sometime and see what kind of response you get. Okay? So let me go through this real quick. These guys right here. Okay? Alfred Adler. Okay, he was the founder of individual psychology. He broke away from Sigmund Freud. All right? Nathan Ackerman, the unofficial founder of family therapy, the parent figure of psychodynamic family therapy. Okay, Murray Bowen. He's the one that developed, basically instrumental in development of the systemic approach to family therapy. Jay Haley, strategic family therapy. Haley developed ideas relating to power, hierarchy, and strategic interventions, including directive as well as paradoxical techniques. Paradoxical. Now that one's a challenging one. That one is interesting. Okay, like if you have a person that has anger issues, the paradoxical challenge to them is like, okay, when you get angry, really get angry. Instead of suppress it, just let it go. That's the paradoxical part. Okay? Salvador Minuchin, structural family therapy. Carl Whitaker, experiential, yeah, it's late. Yeah, okay, so symbolic experiential family therapy. All right? Let's see, Virginia Satir, I think that's how you say it. Satiri or whatever. Okay, she was also with the experiential family therapy. Chloe Mandes, strategic family therapy. Okay, Ivan Nagy. I'm going to leave it at that, even though they have the self-pronunciation in here. Contextual family therapy. Steve DeShazer, he's the solution-focused. Michael White is a co-founder of Narrative Family Movement. Narrative therapy is interesting too, and you have the client develop a narrative as in a session. You're walking with them through a narrative, and you basically start off with something, and you have them start adding to it in a narrative way. Like for instance, I had a client, and I asked her. I said, "Okay, let's play a game here." And you don't tell them narrative. Let's play a game here. You want to play a game? Sure. Well, she's 10 years old. Okay, sure. Why not? Yeah. Okay. What are we gonna do? I said, okay. Well, let's play this. Let's say, okay, if you could be anybody you wanted to be, who would you be? Boom. And she names something. Then you carry it on. Okay. So if you're that person, what are you doing right now, or what do you want to do? And then they add to it. So that's narrative. Okay. So you're just having them, but you're adding because you're able to probably throw different things out there. You're helping them develop, and what they're doing is basically developing a story within themselves of what they would really hope to achieve and stuff. Let's see. Susan Johnson, emotional focus therapy. Neil Jacobson, he is behavioral marital therapy. Andrew Christensen, integrative behavioral couple therapy. John Gottman, who is still alive, he had the Gottman method couple therapy. which you can actually go to his seminars and be trained in a lot of different things. Gottman has also developed grief. You can become a grief specialist through his training, which is very intense. Very intense to become a grief specialist through Gottman. Let's see, Alan Grumman, integrative couple therapy. Okay, did I cover them all? Yeah. So those, they work together in some of them. Some of these people work together. They literally did work side by side in this and stuff. So pick one, all right? Pick one and develop it. Not extensively, but research it and develop it. And put a presentation together because you get to share the presentation. Okay? Some interesting individuals. Okay? Very important in the world of psychology, very important in the world of marriage and family. A lot of these are well-known names. The further you go with your education, you're going to see a lot of these once again and stuff. Any questions? Any thoughts? Any questions on your homework? Okay. Well, didn't go as long as I thought, but how many of you still have to do your journal? 2, 3? You got yours done? Okay. All right. Remember, 11:59 tonight. And just submit it there on Canvas and stuff. Have you started?
I'm still waiting for my book to come.
You don't have the book?
No. You responded to my email though.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I'll
Good.
have
I'm
it
glad.
before next Tuesday, so I'll get both of the journals in.
You want to use this book?
Sure, if you don't mind.
Just put it back next week.
Okay, thank you.
Just use that one.
Okay.
And then when your book comes in, you can switch.
Yeah, thank
Okay.
you.
Okay? So, anything else? All right, so let's see. Voices. Wow. All right. Next week we're going to do a case study, okay? And what I'm going to do as far as a case study is I'm going to, if I can get it all done, I'm going to type up a story, a real story, okay? And I'm going to present it to you guys, and you guys are going to kind of together work on something as far as you guys are the counselor, and this is your client, and this is what you're going to do and develop a kind of like a treatment plan or how you're going to deal with and work with and stuff of that nature. Okay? It's nothing that you have to write or anything. It's the fact that this is going to be done in class, and then we'll just talk about it. Okay? I have a lot of cases I can give you. A lot of challenging cases. In fact, I might even ask you guys to help me with a case, a current case and stuff. So, and don't be surprised at some of the things that I give you to do. This is all to help you develop and be prepared, all right? There won't be any pop quizzes.
Oh, that's nice.
No pop quizzes, all right?
So
All you have as far as any type of testing is a midterm and a final.
Got it.
All right? Everything else is your regular assignments and stuff. Okay? All right, folks. Have a great evening.